stop scrolling. Beauty doesn't just turn heads, it detonates kingdoms. Dawn claws at the Tower of London, damp stone. A trace of rosewater, bells like knives. In the half-light, a B-shaped choker flashes, brand or bullseye. Either way, it's the collar tag of history's most radioactive rumor, Anne Boleyn. Beautiful, strategic, marked. Here's the part the legend hides: beauty in Tudor England wasn't decoration. It was danger, a currency, a crowbar, a loaded headline. A whisper about witches' marks after she was gone. A confession pressed out like breath on glass. A courtroom tuned for speed, not truth. A contraband book slipped to a king that hit harder than cannon fire. A smile recast as evidence. A necklace repackaged as PR. And this isn't a one-off. Stack Anne beside the world's other sirens. Cleopatra Mata Hari, Mary Queen of Scots Hedy Lamarr. Beauty opens doors, power slams them, rumor sells the keys. Different centuries, same blast radius. Welcome to Filthy Secrets of the Most Beautiful Women in History. Anne Boleyn, a deep dive where we treat beauty like the live wire it is. Want legends? Swipe away. Want receipts? Hit play. Then tell me that B around her throat. Boleyn. Brand or bait? The further we go, the clearer it gets in the right hands. Beauty is leverage. In the wrong hands, it's a warrant. Beauty doesn't just turn heads, it rewires power. Anne Boleyn arrives from France not as a pretty ornament, but as a polished instrument. Language's music timing sharpened to a point. In a court that trades favors like currency, her B-shaped choker flashes across candlelight. Is it brand, is it bait, or is it both? Henry VIII notices. Whispers become policy. The great matter becomes a continental aftershock. Rome loses its grip. A wedding crown lands, a daughter, Elizabeth. Arrives who will one day redraw the map. The sun does not. Enemies do. The Tudor court is a camera that never blinks. A playful line to Henry Norris. Courtly banter, nothing more. Drops into a clerk's notebook like Exhibit A. A musician, Mark Smeaton, signs a confession that reads as if it was written without air. The pace quickens. Procedure puts on mascara. When proof won't cooperate, performance will. A swordsman from France is summoned for what the pamphlets call a clean conclusion. We'll keep it tasteful here. The stage goes quiet, but the rumor mill does not. Then comes the post-credits edit. Long after she's gone, Anne's body is revised on parchment by enemies who never met her witches' marks. A sixth finger, the sort of details that arrive late and sell fast. Portraits painted years afterward fix a face the living barely saw. Each canvas a different verdict. Meanwhile, a slim, dangerous book, The Obedience of a Christian Man. The text she is said to have slipped within reach of the king keeps humming through Europe like contraband voltage. Beauty opened the door, ideas changed the room. Was Anne a seductress, a schemer, a saint, or simply the most dangerous kind of beautiful? The kind that makes men change laws? Ask Cleopatra, ask Mata Hari. Different centuries, same blast radius when image outruns evidence. This is the part where the legend usually fades to black. Ours doesn't. We're going back into the file room to pull the receipts that matter: how a necklace became a target, how a confession was sealed without oxygen, how anatomy was edited after the credits, and who profited from each rewrite. No gore, no gawking, just the mechanisms. Keep watching. The pretty story ends here. The dangerous one, the one with names pages and pressure points, begins in the chamber. Start with a piece of jewelry. 3 pearls, 3 letters, 1 message, B for Boleyn. In portraits painted after her fall, the B-shaped choker gleams like a logo, clean as a company mark. But in candlelit rooms where alliances breathed and backstabbers took notes, that little necklace did more than decorate, it broadcast. It said, "I am not anonymous. I have a name you can say out loud and a place you can't ignore." Branding isn't vanity in a court like Henry's. It's navigation. You wear a heraldic crest so people know who protects you. You wear a saint, so heaven knows who you're petitioning. Anne wore herself. It was audacious, modern, and catastrophically easy to reframe. The same object that told a story of confidence could be tilted half an inch and sold as hubris. See the whispers say, she put her name round her throat so no one could miss it. Now the choker isn't a signature, it's evidence of appetite. Beauty meet danger, the closer you shine the light, the longer the shadow. Listen to the soft satire the necklace invites. Court poets call it a garland of virtue. Rivals call it a bell round the cat. Account books call it proof of proximity. Pearls don't pay for themselves. In a culture obsessed with symbols, the easiest way to wound a woman is to weaponize her mirror. You don't prove she schemed, you prove she looked like someone who might. The logic is lazy and lethal, image first. Inference, second, verdict scheduled. Well, we're not here to sneer at pearls. We're here to clock the pivot point, how signal turns to siren. If the bee was brand and bait at once, the hand that set the hook was style itself. Anne's French polished the thing that made rooms lean toward her before they learned to lean away. If a necklace can be read as arrogance, what happens when your entire education speaks with a French accent? Anne's real makeover didn't happen at the jeweler. It happened in France. She returned to England with court grammar in her bones, the timing of a bow, the angle of a glance, the way a refusal can be phrased as a dance step. To a Tudor room trained on bluntness that felt like sorcery. She didn't merely enter, she arrived fluent in the secret handshake of continental power. French finish is soft power with a steel core. You don't shove, you suggest. You don't beg, you present. Beauty becomes a choreography of intervals. Eye contact held a heartbeat too long to be accident, and a heartbeat too short to be accusation. It worked. Ambassadors noticed, courtiers adapted. A king changed the subject of Europe. But Polish is easy to relabel when enemies warm their pens. Too French, they muttered, as if an adverb could be a crime. The implication is tidy foreign equals loose equals dangerous equals her. Same gestures, different captions. A compliment becomes coaxing. A witty reply becomes provocation. The same elegance that opened doors now looks to rivals in need of a storyline, like the alleyway, to something darker. Here's where the satire bites. Imagine a mid-level lord late to the new etiquette, grumbling that good English honesty doesn't need all this lace. Translation, he has lost the map and wants to redraw the city. It's not that Anne broke rules, it's that she helped write new ones, and men who prefer the old chapter are suddenly literary critics. None of this proves guilt, it proves readiness to accuse. And once a culture decides your Polish is a problem, it starts to collect polished sentences the way a detective collects shells one by one, pocketed for later. Speaking of sentences, what happens when courtly banter gets archived like evidence? Welcome to the parlor where flirting is a professional sport and the scoreboard is subtlety. Courtly love is supposed to be play, riddles, puns, compliments so exaggerated they wrap back to innocence. Everyone knows the rules, you say. Your glove could launch a fleet, I say. Then I'll moor it safely, and the point isn't romance, it's rhetoric. The wit proves your mind, the restraint proves your character. Now imagine an audience that suddenly refuses to play. A line Anne allegedly tosses to Henry Norris, something coy about dead men's shoes, the sort of mordant little spark that keeps courts awake, gets filed, not forgotten. In a neutral world, it's smoke that dissipates. In a hostile one, it's smoke inventing a fire. Banter becomes testimony because someone steers it there and someone else nods. Here, the danger of beauty sharpens a beautiful woman playing a beautiful game, can be rewritten as a strategist laying snares. It's the same words just caught at the wrong angle. Satire helps us breathe. Picture a clerk, quill-poised humor surgically removed, annotating repartee as if it were a treaty. But don't miss the dread under the joke. When context collapses, everything becomes confession-shaped. This is how you criminalize charisma. You unstring the lute and claim the music was a plot. You take a language designed to deflect desire and demand it define desire. And once that pivot happens, the machine asks for something heavier. A joke is nimble, a confession is heavy. To seal a narrative this ambitious, you need weight on the page. Enter Mark Smeaton, a musician whose name will soon carry more gravity than his job ever did. His statement arrives like a stone dropped into a shallow bowl, too loud for the water it displaces. A quip can be twisted, a confession can be staged. We keep this respectful and platform safe, and that's easy, because the point isn't gore, it's gravity. Mark Smeaton's confession sits in the record like a cathedral bell you can't unhear. Was it voluntary? Sources disagree in the way sources do when power has set the table. What most accounts agree on is tone total, unusually neat, remarkably aligned with the story the storytellers required. Think about the geometry of pressure. A court has pivoted from flirtation to charge. A king's patience is broke and his politics expensive. Enemies of the queen have aligned their faces into consensus. Inside that geometry, a musician, gifted, dependent, proximate, breaks. We don't need lurid details to name the dynamic. You can coerce without leaving marks. You can shape a narrative by offering the exact words it lacks, and nothing more. The tragedy of signed under air is twofold. First, it flattens a person into a plot device. Second, it upgrades rumor into architecture. Once the confession exists, offices that have waited politely to believe can finally do so with solemnity. Out comes the calendar. Speeds go from walk to jog to sprint. The investigation becomes schedule management. What cannot be proved can now be performed. We should smile briefly at the bureaucratic absurdity hardship filed in triplicate ink, drying like a conscience. Then sober up. This isn't only about whether Smeaton's signature was free, it's about how a system needs it to be regardless. Confession, even contested, is the keystone that allows the next arch to stand the show trial. A ceremony that promises clarity and delivers closure, whether or not it deserves either. With a confession on the table, the stagehands roll out the set. Imagine a courtroom redesigned by theater directors. The lighting is excellent, the timing is impeccable, the stakes are absolute. No one says ratings, but attendance is robust, and the rumor mill has already sold out tomorrow's matinee. This is the Tudor show trial, where due process exists, yes, but on a diet, trim-toned and tailored to fit a calendar, not a question. Anne and her co-accused arrive not as people, but as roles. The script has already been workshopped: adultery, treason, the whisper about bloodlines that polite mouths refuse to shape, but impolite pens happily do. Evidence is present in the theatrical sense, props not proof, dates strained to align. Glances remembered with suspicious clarity, banter reprinted as confession-adjacent dialogue, and over it all the choreography of solemnity, titles intoned, charges read, gestures of mercy rehearsed. We keep the language gentle here, but note the mechanics. Speed is itself a tactic. Move fast enough and the audience won't have time to ask for sources. Move formally enough and the audience won't think they're watching a performance. The trick is not crudeness, but polish. The same polish once used to praise Anne, now repurposed to bury her. Beauty is danger, even when it belongs to the law. A graceful process can carry an ugly outcome, like a dancer carrying a knife you never see. And yet, inside the ritual, there are always static shocks of humanity. A glance between friends, a fragment of prayer, a line delivered with a courage that doesn't cancel the verdict, but does haunt it. History remembers those flashes because they remind us the stage had a floor. The curtain falls on a timetable. We will not dwell on the mechanics of the sentence. The platform prefers restraint, and so do we. What matters for the chamber is this: once a trial is performed, a body becomes policy. The kingdom explains itself by explaining her, and the next chapter of explanation turns to the most intimate ledger of all, the body and its heirs, where failure to produce a son becomes the strongest rumor's best friend. The stage is cleared, but the argument isn't. Open the Crown's account book and you'll find a column labeled Heirs Male circled so hard the quill almost tears the page. In Tudor arithmetic, legitimacy wasn't sentiment, it was infrastructure. Alliances, borders, taxes, the future behaving itself. Against that math stood a body doing what bodies do: complicated, unpredictable, private. Anne gives England Elizabeth a life whose future brilliance no one can yet price. The court smiles politely and writes pending in the margin. After that, losses arrive, quietly, painfully. and rumor turns obstetrician. We keep the details gentle. This is not a channel for gawking. What matters is the reframing. Misfortune becomes omen. Biology becomes blame. Midwives lower their voices. Priests lift their eyebrows. Meanwhile, the men who depend on neat succession install an even neater narrative. A queen's value equals a son's heartbeat. Fail to produce that sound on schedule, and the political weather pivots overnight. The court loves an equation. It hates a mystery. Here beauty becomes danger in a new register. A face that once curated curiosity now absorbs cause. She bewitched him, one camp hisses, because the alternative that a king made a gamble and lost is less satisfying than a story with a villain. The language shrinks a woman to apparatus vessel hope chest policy pipeline. A human life reduces to a yes, no line item that can be weaponized either way. Give birth to a boy providence. Do not proof of what exactly is left vague so that everything fits. Notice the cleverness of the cruelty. You cannot argue with a womb the way you can argue with a law. That's why the politics prefers it. You can't subpoena hormones, you can only translate outcomes into accusations. From there, it's a short ride to superstition's favorite trick. If the body didn't cooperate in life, rewrite it in myth. Add a blemish. Add a finger. Add anything that makes destiny look inevitable in retrospect. If policy can turn a womb into a ledger, propaganda can turn a body into a poster. Anne's opponents discover a miracle of post-production retrospective physiognomy. Years after the execution, a hostile pen, Hello Nicholas Sander, publishes the bonus features no one mentioned when she was alive. A suspicious mole here, a malformed nail there, and the crowd-pleasing rumor of a sixth finger. Conveniently unverifiable, eminently quotable, tailored to readers who prefer bodies that fit their beliefs. This is propaganda's oldest sleight of hand. When you can't win on facts, pivot to features. Medieval Europe loved a moral map etched onto skin. Beauty for virtue, blemish for vice. A nonsense that travels well because it demands no homework. Anne's polished French manners now recast as cover for a demonic signature. Her quick mind rebranded as trickery. Her necklace, obviously a talisman if you tilt your head and squint through malice. Let's keep our satire dry. Imagine a future historian describing your worst selfie as evidence of treason because the lighting was unnatural. That's the level of seriousness we're dealing with. Real scholars will warn you these marks arrive after the fact from partisan sources. Real gossip will reply, yes, but imagine if. The rhetorical trick is irresistible because it promises clarity with zero cost. No need to weigh testimony or parse politics. Simply read the face. Or better yet, redraw it. Beauty is danger again. Paradoxically, the more compelling the subject, the more tempting the edit. If she was extraordinary, then the story must explain it by something extra, even if imagination supplies the extra piece. In that sense, the sixth finger is less a digit than a diagnosis of a culture eager to swap scholarship for vibes. But here's the twist: the smear campaign can't erase. The most disruptive thing Anne ever carried wasn't on her skin. It was in her hands. A book, not a charm, not a potion, a text with ideas sharp enough to rewire a king's theology and a continent's politics. Hold the jewels, pass the contraband. The volume is modest in size. Incendiary, in effect, William Tyndale's The Obedience of a Christian Man. An argument that God's law outranks Rome's bureaucracy, and that kings might answer to Scripture without papal middle management. Whether Anne literally slipped this book to Henry or strategically parked it within reach, the result is the same ideas walk into the room wearing court dress, and suddenly policy starts speaking a new grammar. We resist hagiography. This isn't about sainting Anne as the mother of reform. It's about mechanism. Beauty gets the meeting, argument keeps the door open. Where charisma draws eyes, sentences change minds. In a world where religion is also international law, a marginal note. In a king's rented copy can ripple like a small earthquake. Bishops blanch, courtiers calculate. The long fuse of the English Reformation inches toward the charge. Cue the counter-narrative: if you can't refute an idea, question its courier. She bewitched him with books say those who prefer their queens decorative and their kings obedient. Better to imagine a sorceress than acknowledge a sovereign persuaded by prose, and so the smear machine redoubles: a woman with a library must be unnatural. A woman whose reading changes statecraft must be dangerous. You can burn a book. Failing that, you can burn the reputation of the person who liked it. This is where the chamber gets quiet. You don't have to agree with Tyndale to recognize the pattern fear of thought dressed as fury at a person. The beauty is danger line resolves into clarity. Beauty let the ideas into the palace. The ideas set the furniture on fire. The blame fell on the courier, because paper doesn't bleed and policy hates mirrors. And when ideas can't be unthought, power reaches for its most persuasive argument ritual, a public gesture designed to say, "This chapter ends here, even if the words keep running under the floorboards." We'll stay tasteful. The point is staging, not suffering. When the verdict is a foregone conclusion and the optics matter almost more than the outcome, Tudor justice reaches for a performance called mercy, not leniency. You don't commute the sentence, you curate it. A swordsman from Calais is summoned, a specialist reputed to deliver a swift, precise end. The message is double. The realm is terrible in judgment, but tasteful in execution. It's PR in the key of solemn. Notice how the script repurposes beauty's grammar, timing, posture, costume, every element polished to communicate. Officials speak with measured decorum. Attendants move like stagehands trained by monks. The final moment is designed to feel like a mercy, even to those who cannot bear to watch. The theater insists the kingdom is not cruel. It is efficient, modern, humane, qualities Anne herself once exhibited in another register. The irony writes itself in ink no one laughs at. We don't need to describe the blow. We need to remember the argument that by perfecting the ritual, the state redeems the act, that a clean conclusion cleans the story, that an imported expert sanctifies a domestic problem. Beauty is danger one last time displaced, this time onto the process which dazzles enough to distract. If closure is a spectacle, conscience can take the day off. Yet history, stubborn as a stain, refuses the edit. Within hours, the machinery of daily life resumes. Within days, rumor returns to its desk. Within years, a child named Elizabeth will inherit the same stage and write a very different play. The sword ended a life. It did not end the argument. The audience may go home. The echo lingers in the walls. After the stage is struck and the props are carted away, the fiercest battles move to a new front memory. Painters, pamphleteers, priests, and partisans redraw Anne in the colors that suit them. Saint Siren schemer symptom, until the woman disappears behind the versions. Once the body is silent, the portraits start talking. Here is Anne, the Protestant heroine, gaze lifted, pearls arranged like punctuation, a martyr framed for a Reformation script. Here is Anne, the temptress, chin-tilted necklace, glinting like a warning label, a cautionary emblem for sermons about obedience. Here is Anne, the politician, sober and sharp eyes that could itemize a room. None of these are from life. Most are from decades later. Memory art where likeness takes a back seat to message. The contest isn't about paint, it's about ownership. Whoever fixes the face owns the lesson. For Protestants, Anne becomes Providence in velvet, proof that God works in Tudor wardrobes. For Catholic apologists, she is the door through which sin entered policy. For novelists hunting royalty with heartbeats, she is the irresistible center of gravity, doomed, brilliant, beautifully framed. The longer you stare, the more the frames feel like verdicts pretending to be biographies. Beauty is danger even now, because it seduces the second draft. A compelling face invites projection. A dramatic arc simplifies research. A tragic end flatters the living with closure. The risk is that we inherit the propaganda without the footnotes. The sixth finger sneaks in again. The necklace resumes its double duty. The French finish reappears as halo or horn, depending on the publisher's creed. If you sense déjà vu, you should. The afterimage recycles the same tools that undid the living woman. Symbol rumor speed. Only this time the target cannot answer. So what survives if we turn down the saturation? A young woman highly educated for her age, skilled at the politics of attention, who helped midwife a set of ideas larger than anyone in her decade could comfortably manage. A queen whose losses were immediately moralized by those with bills to pay. A reputation split by partisans into equal and opposite fables, both profitable. A daughter who later writes the strangest footnote of all, that the failure became the author of England's glittering century. Step out of the chamber, and the pictures keep staring back. Ask yourself, which Anne have you been taught to see? The branded bait, the book-bearing reformer, the courtly trickster, the edited anatomy, the stained glass saint in the echo. We'll set the portraits side by side with their receipts map, how beauty keeps getting drafted for jobs it never applied for, and trade the rumor mill for three simple tools: dignity, evidence, consent, to test the stories we live by now. The case files close, the investigation doesn't. Step out of the chamber and let the noise drain away, the murmured titles, the silk, the careful choreography of a clean conclusion. What remains is a single through-line beauty, becomes dangerous the moment image outruns evidence. We just watched that arc bend in real time. A necklace that started as a signature turned into a bullseye. French Polish was relabeled as vice. Banter hardened into testimony. A confession appeared as if written without air. Justice dressed itself for the stage. A private body was drafted into public policy. Anatomy was revised for publicity. A slim book slipped inside a palace, rewired a continent's grammar. Ritual posed as mercy, and afterward paint and pamphlet kept writing over the person until only versions remained. It is tempting to shelve this under Tudor problems and move on. Don't. Nothing in that mechanism is truly antique. Replace parchment with platforms, courtiers with comment sections, pamphlets with feeds, and the machine hums like new. We still treat badges and pendants, logos and blue checks as evidence. We still mistranslate competence with charisma as manipulation, when the status quo needs a culprit more than an explanation. We still screenshot jokes and promote them to confessions. We still prefer speed to doubt, choreography to verification, finality to repair. Beauty is danger isn't a warning about faces. It is a warning about systems that convert faces into verdicts when certainty is hungry. What then do we carry out of the archive besides unease? Three small tools: dignity, evidence, consent, and the discipline to use them before the music swells. Dignity reminds us that people are not props. If a story turns a human being into scenery for someone else's morality play, it does not deserve your amplification. Evidence demands that claims survive questions that do not already love them. Dates, contexts, sources, the unglamorous scaffolding that collapses most viral certainties, must hold, or the story is theater. Consent insists that ends never sanctify means. Whether by algorithmic pressure, PR choreography, or a crowd's momentum, no campaign is entitled to your assent without your say-so. These are principles, but they can live as habits. When a narrative leans hard on appearance, lower the volume and ask what survives once the lights dim. When a process dazzles, raise your standard and treat spectacle as a red flag, not a closing argument. When a conclusion arrives faster than the questions extend the test, slowness is not cowardice, but hygiene. When someone tries to litigate the past by ceremony rather than sources, ask for receipts or excuse yourself from the pageant. Legends are free, receipts cost time, pay it. Humor helps, but only as ventilation, never as proof. We joked about procedure in full costume to keep breath in the room. The joke does not replace the audit. The chamber has been careful: no gawking, no gore, no shortcuts. The same restraint is good modern practice. A grim lesson from Smeaton's page remains: contemporary pressure can produce a perfect sentence. Perfection is not the same as truth. If a confession, a statement, a clip seems precisely shaped to close the case, check how the room was arranged around it. Another quiet lesson survives: the fireworks. Ideas travel on the backs of people, and couriers pay the toll. Anne did not invent Tyndale, but she moved the argument closer to power. When the furniture caught fire, power blamed the messenger because paper does not bleed. We still do this, attack carriers instead of confronting claims, because it's quicker, cleaner, and more satisfying to punish a person than to revise a worldview. Correct for that impulse. If an idea frightens you, argue with the idea. Do not burn the person holding the book. Finally, the afterimage. It is not only oil paint in a gallery, it is every thumbnail, every definitive doc, every tidy arc that lets us feel righteous without knowing much. The portraits of Anne are mirrors with captions. Stare long enough, and you start to see the captions, not the face. Build your own triptych, what you were told, what the sources say, what you cannot yet know. Live with that last panel. Intellectual humility would have saved lives in the 1530s. It can still save reputations now. Once you hear it, beauty is danger lands differently. It no longer means beware the beautiful. It means beware the machines that weaponize beauty, sanctify the fallout as fate, and invite your gaze to become a gavel. Those machines only function if we lend them our eyes without terms. Don't. Keep your doubts close, your curiosity closer, and your receipts where everyone can see them. Our task is not to rescue Anne into sainthood or sink her into sin. It is to uninstall the mechanism that made either outcome feel inevitable. So here's a closing test you can use outside these walls when a story arrives dressed to kill, polished, perfectly timed, ready to trend. Ask out loud 3 questions. Where's the dignity? Where's the evidence? Where's the consent? If you cannot hear the answers, over the applause, you are not required to clap. Not all is buried as deep as the powerful want. The past has more secrets. The present hides them better. The chamber doors close behind us. The echo goes wherever you look next.